I have no need to.
Oh, okay. He's made himself clear, everybody. All right.
Wait, but why would I have to meet up in game? What's going on?
No. We just used to do that, and then we don't anymore. You know, and I just
literally,
it
only happened in one video. We only ever met up in one video.
Is that true?
I don't know. Yeah, and it was like the most recent one, I think. And then we split halfway through the video because I didn't want to follow you around anymore, because you kept on switching characters. And then it was that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, hello everyone. Welcome. It's Balance with Boots. Boots, why is this one so special?
Is it special? I didn't realize. I didn't read the patch. No, I read the patch notes. It's special because it's less of a balance patch and more of a paradigm shift.
Ooh, you've taken the words right from the devs there. I believe they do mention.
Is that what they say?
Yeah, they say that they're looking at a paradigm shift. They do, yeah.
They must have used it. Oh, maybe that's why it's in my head. Okay, hold on. Let me
No,
read that again.
It's good. People are going to be curious what they're talking about. This is...
No, I would have used... If I had known that those were the exact words, I would have used different words. Oh, that's a shame. Okay. Go ahead, though.
All right, so guys, this is... Now, Boots, you can disagree with me, but I don't think you will. This is the biggest balance patch in terms of number of changes that's ever come to Guild Wars 2.
That is true.
Like, we've had some major stuff before, like Condi damage stacking and ferocity scaling changes, which have been massive and profound. Don't get me wrong. But in terms of, like, actual tweaks to skills and number changes... This is nuts. This is really crazy. Did you see the World vs. World stream where the devs said how many changes they estimated before it came out?
I didn't see the stream, but I heard a report about it afterwards, and it was like over 900 or something.
I thought what I had in my head was 700 to 800, but maybe 900 as well. Individual skill changes. So, wow, that's a lot. Now, just so that everybody knows, many of the changes are just on board with a general principle, which we're going to be talking about in this video. And we're not going to go point by point through hundreds of things like that. And just so that people also know, while there is a lot of stuff for general Guild Wars 2, okay, that will affect PvE and raiding and all that stuff you probably enjoy, mostly this is aimed at competitive stuff. All right, so if you're not into those formats of the game, which frankly, I don't blame you, most people aren't, and I understand that most people will tune out at that point, a lot of it's to do with that. All right, so the way we're going to deal with this is instead of trying to do it all at once, we're going to split a heavy episode, a medium episode, a light episode, and this as an introductory thing where we read exactly what the devs were going for, because honestly, they could talk, I reckon, Boots, they could talk for what, like 5 hours justifying everything they've done. Like, it's so crazy.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk 10 hours discussing
we could. Guys, I've been telling Boots we have to try and keep these snappy, and I think we're going to fail. I'm really scared.
We are definitely going to fail.
All right, so what do you want to say?
Well, I'm just reading a little bit. Yeah, they use the word paradigm. They don't say paradigm shift, though. That was new for me.
I must have imagined the word shift. You know, paradigm shift makes me think of Final Fantasy 13, because that was like their battle combat thing, right? I don't know if you ever played that. But, okay,
so this is the Final Fantasy 13 of balance patches.
Yes, it is. Right, now, guys, basically, there is a post on the forums, which they released at midnight on Friday. Thanks for that, ArenaNet. That's why I'm going to get into it the next day. Some of us were trying to sleep. Now the wiki guys have copied it over, and you get all the skill tooltips. So that's actually where we're reading it from, and that's what you can check out in the description of this video if you want to see. So, Boots, do you want to read the introductory February ? 2020 global changes section?
Yes. So they say February ? So this is a preview. How soon do you think this is going to come? Because last previews we've gotten, the patch came the Tuesday afterwards.
Yeah, that's true. I did see something about this. They talked about the number of changes in one of their World vs. World streams, and in another one, they were responding to community speculation about when this would release. And I think they said that it definitely wouldn't be during the current PvP season, because it is a little bit more competitively oriented. So
true.
The season ends on the 24th of February, which is quite a bit away still. So you know,
they're putting this out really early, probably because they definitely want feedback.
Yeah, and they say that a few times as well, don't they? So people can give it, but please try to be intelligent as you do so. I've had a bit of a bit of an aneurysm the past 24 hours reading like Reddit and the forums and the kind of stuff.
I've made a point not to read Reddit or the forums.
Yeah, I hate it. People say things like they're facts about balance and skills, and they're just not. They just anyway. We're here to give you the real story.
I've come to my conclusions on my own in this case, and I think I have some I have some critiques, I think, but nothing too bad.
Okay. All right. Well, so yeah, give us the skinny. What did the devs say at the start?
All right, global changes. Hi, everyone. Today we are previewing the next set of balance updates to come to Tyria. With this release, we are a significant number of changes we put together for the competitive game modes, but many of the fundamental principles are applicable in every game mode. In particular, the focus on gameplay being more active is a big piece of the plan changes.
Yeah.
That said, oh yeah, you want to say something?
Well, that active thing, that you're really going to see that, right? And that's just one of my favorite things about the patch that they're going forwards with. That it's like things that you do are really tied to specific actions a lot more. There's a lot less stuff of like 3 things happening at once. It's like this action does this thing.
I've definitely noticed that, and it is a complaint we've had for quite a long time with this.
It is, dude. It is. Yeah.
Yeah. That said, we recognize that there are many specific differences between game modes, and the nature of changes for game mode should follow suit. E.g., many bosses and creatures in instance content focus attacks on the player with the highest toughness. A minor trait, Stone Flesh, gives an elementalist additional toughness when attuned to Earth and can cut off both going into Earth attunement and selecting Earth trait line. This is absolutely true. This is something I've complained about. So we're changing that trait to grant 7% damage reduction instead of 150 toughness, allowing it to play well with that type of content and expand some build options.
Do you really think that's been a big problem over the years?
Not a big problem, but I mean, Condi Weaver uses Earth trait line, and they have to, coordinate with their tanks to say, please put this much more toughness on than usual.
Yeah, I think this was the biggest problem when you're like in a really optimal group where the toughness tank is only a toughness tank because they have 1 infusion on or something ridiculous.
Exactly.
Yeah. But in general, it's kind of nice, I guess.
Yeah. We're planning many changes of this nature, as well as reworks and more. We look forward to seeing your feedback both on this set of changes as well as on future potential changes. We posted additional threads in the PvP-oriented changes and the World vs. World-oriented changes, 2 different links even though they're the same thing.
Yeah.
The systems team.
So that's a big general thing for everyone to know about this patch coming up, that the PvP and World vs. World changes are all listed together and largely are the same. I mean, there's a couple
That's interesting in its own way. Especially since some of the changes are reduce the number of targets of this from 10 to 5.
Yes, they are, yeah. So, like, World vs. World and PvP are very different formats, but there are so many changes here. They're kind of being treated uniformly in a lot of ways. I don't see too many problems with that, but be on edge about that. We'll get there for sure. So, game-wide, though, obviously they're thinking about raiding and stuff like that, so there are toys for everyone, and we've got just, like, general changes here. So I'll read this little section, yeah, Boots?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so auras. Now, this one made me laugh. Aura effects have been updated to be larger and more noticeable. The previous aura effects are now used for auras on allies and for all characters viewed by PvP spectators when the effect LOD option is checked in the graphics settings. Buff icons used for auras have also been updated for consistency. So
only true Guild Wars 2 players will know why this is funny.
Yeah, well, so we can't show you the animation, obviously, because it's a preview. We can't show you the new consistent icons or whatever. But this is... I laugh, but kind of in a derisive way. Because basically, guys, when the game came out, auras were really big and really obvious. And their size, and I will die on this hill, their size was not appropriate for how minor their effect was. Only 2 of them were really, really important. That was the shocking aura and that was the reflecting aura. The other ones didn't need massive telegraphs. And as the balance pushed on, there started becoming really crazy ways to aura share. Before the Tempest came out, there was like a nuts pure signet build that you could run in PvE, like open world, and spam insane auras on everyone. Do you remember that, Boots, with the old visual effects?
I do.
It was crazy. Yeah. It was one of the biggest problems with visual effects. So you had the community whining about Zerg flashy effects. The devs nerfed one of the big outliers, which it had become. And what has happened for the past few years? People have whined that the auras aren't big enough anymore. That's been a consistent... There's already people typing rage in the comments to this video right now saying, no, they need to be big wooden potatoes, just like my fire auto attacks on staff. And what do we get this patch? Well, congratulations. You've whined enough years that ArenaNet are reversing it.
Okay, they have a nice, like, in-between, right? It's big for you and noticeable for you now, because that's who it matters for, really. But small for everybody else.
Does it matter? None of the aura-based game, like aura share gameplay, really It's that hard. Like, you can look at your own buff bar and know, oh, Frost Aura's still on me. I won't overlap with the new one. You don't need these massive visual effects everywhere. Anyway, I'm being very, very, like, prejudiced here. We don't even know what these effects are.
I don't care that much. Okay, to be fair, auras are difficult to see now.
They are, but rightly so for most of them. I mean, again, the Reflect one and the Shocking one.
Not rightly so, because there are builds that revolve entirely around auras.
Not really. There are 2 auras that are really, especially from a competitive mindset, that are really, really important. That you can see exactly what they're on.
To other people seeing them, yes, but for yourself, like, anyway, there the aura sharing builds that are kind of good, and I think that at least a little bit more visual is a good thing. Maybe not for everyone, but at least for yourself.
You know what? The other thing I'll complain about, right, is in competitive, you can see the animation of Aftershock itself, or Rebound itself, or you can see that someone's on a staff and just went to Earth Attunement. You can know these things are happening anyway, if you just put a little bit of brain power into it. But in any case, look, it's going to be cool. And one thing I do want to mention about this is you've got the Light Aura now, Chaos Aura got properly unified, and the Dark Aura. They're all new. They all look a little bit different from one another, right? And so the uniformity between all of those, I am an advocate for all this stuff. And at the end of the day, it's a very, very minor thing. It's just got a long story on the back of it. And I'm dying on the hill, damn it. The auras were okay. That's how I feel.
Okay, you know what I like? I like that now that they're larger and more noticeable, they might more act as a deterrent.
Oh.
Like now they're more powerful for people who use them, because people now will see them as opposed to never having seen them before and be like, oh, I'm actually thinking about this now. They have something that will give them might and me burning if I hit them, so maybe I won't hit them right now. And that means that the auras are now more powerful than they were before.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, yeah, it will affect people's gameplay a bit more, I guess, in certain situations. You got to remember as well, by the way, this isn't just about Elementalist, guys. You know, loads of classes can combo for whatever auras, and hopefully you'll feel flashier doing them now. Let's move on, since that's a very small
By the way, I'm very glad that we're doing this really quick and snappy, because it's not like we want to talk about the first point in the general stuff for
ages.
5 minutes.
Yeah, all right. Moving on, okay? Unblockables are changing. There's a new icon. And skills and traits which grant the unblockable status now all use the same unified buff. So if a warrior makes himself unblockable, the buff on him is going to look the same as a reaper making himself unblockable, and so on. This buff is intensity stacking. Remember, they are saying buff, not boon. They're not like adding a new boon to the game, like Reverse Aegis. It is intensity stacking, and stacks are lost whenever attacks hit or miss, which is currently how most of that works anyway. Maybe there's some weird outliers that they're now unifying in. Single strikes, which can nonetheless hit multiple foes, will only consume 1 stack. And skills which grant the unblockable status for a duration have been updated to use number of hits instead.
Yep.
So, I will say the whole 1 strike can hit multiple people and only consume 1 stack. That's kind of interesting. That I think about like piercing projectiles, like let's say a Soul Beast, Warhorn 5s, swaps to Longbow, and then Rapid Fires. Well, Rapid Fire is probably a bad idea, but maybe they're auto, right, with the Grandmaster trait. They could unblockably hit 5 people, you know, penetrate or reflect will in 5 instances kind of thing, or go through 5 Earth auras or whatever.
But the question is, would this, okay, so like, I could understand like an unblockable, I don't know, Dragon Tooth or something, and that would hit 5 people, and 1 stack would be used. But if you did like an unblockable Ranger Axe 2 with the 5 axes that go out, and would that be all the hits only take 1? Or would that be staggered?
Well, it says single strikes, so I feel like
so it's not
split
a
blade. Yeah, I feel like split blade is like 7 strikes or whatever it is, 5 strikes.
Yeah, 5.
I feel like.
Okay, all right.
But so your Dragon's Tooth example is pretty good for sure.
Yeah, but but interestingly enough, like most unblockable effects in the game right now were duration based. So for all of those, these are actually a bit of a nerf,
I guess, in some perspective. But if they can recalibrate like their cooldowns and stuff, there are just to the audience's benefit, there are so many cooldown changes and damage changes and stuff here. It's really difficult to predict where certain power levels will be, like damage versus healing, all kinds of stuff. But yeah, maybe, I guess as a principle, you're kind of right there, yeah. The last general change is that downed allied players and defeated allied players' icons on the minimap have been updated and are also displayed above the characters in world. Did you have any thoughts about this, Boots? I did.
No, I had no real thoughts. Just might help people actually go out and try to aid players.
I guess, yeah. My thoughts were looking back at alpha footage for the game. You guys know I'm a sucker for that stuff. This used to be in the game. This used to look really good. They used to have the downstate or help me icons and stuff on the minimap overlaid beautifully, especially if you look at like old conquest
For
stuff.
how far away?
No, I'm just talking about the minimap. Like when you look at the minimap, you'd see it. That's what we're talking about here, aren't we? They're also displayed.
No.
Also displayed.
It's been updated to also be displayed on the characters.
Yeah. Well, the minimap part, definitely. I feel like this goes back to how the alphas were implemented. Fantastic.
I think it is on the minimap still.
No, they definitely are on the minimap, but they get overwritten by other stuff. If something else is standing there, the way that they layer together is rubbish. It used to be a lot better. Now it's not. And yeah, on people in game as well. I guess that'll be interesting to see. Hopefully.
Okay.
Not
so
too big.
if there's a character in the world that would be on the minimap, you will also see on your screen
above
in distance.
Them. Yeah.
Above them, even if they're like behind a wall or something.
I guess maybe, yeah, like a beam of light maybe over the wall.
Maybe. Anyway, it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah. So then this general post, guys, goes through a lot of general game-wide changes. We're going to have a video on light, a video on heavy, and a video on medium for that. So stay tuned for that. I will, however, also note that they have another post talking about their competitive ambitions. And we're going to go through that as well here at the start. This talks a lot more about their cooldown philosophies and so on, which I think is really interesting to look at.
And it's the very interesting part, I think, about the general changes.
All right, so do you want to give us the preface again, the preface again?
Absolutely. Hi everyone, today we're previewing the upcoming balance update. We're starting with a bit of a process and general thoughts, then following up with a pile of patch notes. Note that this post is identical for PvP and World vs. World subforums, minus the changes to PvP build items, but duplicated for the purpose of more easily obtaining mode-specific feedback. This post will only be discussing competitive skills, check the rest of the update, blah blah blah. The scope of this update ended up slightly unreal in raw number of changes, but there are only a handful of underlying ideas that were then considered against every skill and trait in the game. So it so happens that there are a lot of these around here, and so a lot of these changes ended up being made. These changes are not final, and we're expecting to make further adjustments based on player feedback as well as our own internal review. Some of the upcoming functional changes still need to be looked at for potential splits as well, I agree, but we feel that the overall list is good enough spot to gather feedback.
Again, this kind of really suggests how far away the patch itself is, later next month or even beyond, right? Because it does seem quite tentative, a lot of the stuff. All right, well, future balance cadence. This patch is unusual in that it's more about establishing a new paradigm than it is here it is. Than it is a regular balance update. So this isn't really a balance patch, guys. It's more of a shake-up patch. The result is a giant set of changes. Moving forward with competitive balance, we wanted to make smaller adjustments more often. I loved this bit, Boots. The specific cadence for balance will always depend on our overall release schedule, but ideally, it will be closer to every 4 to 6 weeks.
So like a month and a half.
Yeah, a month and a half at worst. One big patch every month is how I remembered that my heyday of Guild Wars 1 stuff, and was really good. If they actually manage to do that, even if they hit the middle of that range, it's mind-blowingly good for 2020. Genuinely. Like right now, even, just spoilers for everyone, even looking through a lot of this stuff, I'm still thinking competitive is going to be a bit of a dead end as far as Guild Wars 2 is concerned. Even with the balance very good, there's a lot of other stuff that format needs. But I will say, if they actually hit 4 weeks for like a whole year, maybe even beyond, that's good. That's really good.
I mean, they've been doing pretty well so far this year. Like they do big changes and then small changes, and I think it comes once every maybe 6 weeks.
Yeah, and they've definitely said, I mean, here they'll say, while still having the opportunity to make minor tweaks outside of the regular balance update too.
So that's going to be even faster then.
I mean, we'll see whether they can hold to it, right?
Okay.
I get the sense that there's like new stuff in place, new people there, very ambitious. We don't know what they'll actually get going. Right. The goal here is to have better flexibility to fix problems in a timely manner. And yeah, that's the
Good.
thing, you know. I am sort of feeling, Boots, you know, this is a paradigm shift. If we enter a new paradigm, a new, like, number of condies and boons and time to kills and stuff like that, that's all well and cool. But if we sit in that same paradigm for 3 years straight, again, kind of like the post-POF one, it's not really... People want the shake-ups, you know, and they want a little bit more regular balance and tuning. And so that will be the thing.
Just on the surface, the paradigm that appears to be coming up might be a little Condi heavy, and that probably will need a shake up relatively quickly.
I think that a lot of people have that impression, don't they? And maybe that's because of the number of power coefficient changes that are listed here, while there feels like there's less Condi. But
I mean, there is one specific thing that happened to Condi in PvP that's an issue, but not necessarily in World vs. World.
For PvP, you guys are going to see in a second some amazing amulet stuff, but we'll get there in a moment. Okay, so PvP and World vs. World. For this initial update, the bulk of the splits are being applied to both PvP and World vs. World because the underlying ideas are applicable to both modes. The end result is going to be radically different, and moving forward, we'll be doing more separation and targeted adjustments on a per mode basis. So that's why they're kind of bundled together. Later, they'll go more individual. Now, we're going to dive into more detail of some of the main targets of the update and our main goals moving forward. If you have no interest in power coefficients, damage calculations, or other assorted jargon, you may want to scroll down until you hit the start of the patch notes. So, damage. For this update, they're looking...
Would you like me to read, by the way?
Well, yeah. Why don't you, Boots, explain to people what a power coefficient is? We'll teach them as they read this. What's a power coefficient,
Okay.
Boots?
So, you know how on your weapons, if you look at the tooltip, it'll say, this weapon does 100 and something damage to 200 and something damage. Or if you're like at level 80, it'll say 1,000 something damage to 1,000 something more damage. Power coefficients are the thing that number is multiplied by on your skill that actually determines how much damage is being done.
Yeah, so you've got a base amount that the skill will do, and then you get an additional amount which scales with your power, right? And the higher the...
No, not exactly. That's more healing power. I think... Oh, yeah, that scales with your power. So I think that there's no real initial damage that the skill has done. I think that that's based on your weapon.
Right,
and
okay,
the power
so
coefficient is... Yeah, and then the power coefficient is applied to the weapon damage, and then your power is also applied to that. And then obviously that's canceled out a little bit by the person's toughness and if they have protection or whatever. But yeah, so power coefficients are pretty much the end-all be-all of how much damage a skill will do before all of your other modifiers.
So if my power coefficient on a skill reads as 0.01, what does that mean, Boots?
That means it's going to do very, very little damage. Almost no damage at all.
And if I have a power coefficient of 2, going forwards, the devs are explaining that they're targeting a 2.0 power coefficient as the new baseline for big damage skills. These are skills like Eviscerate, skills that exist to deal large amounts of damage and not do much else. Right, so there's only a few there's quite a few skills like this.
There's
in the game,
quite a few, yeah.
So like your backstabs or your death's judgments or churning earth, maybe. Churning earth obviously has other stuff like all the bleed and whatever. Fire grab is probably a better example actually, as a skill that's just there to do lots of damage. So they're trying to be unified to about a 2.0 coefficient. They do say skills that provide more and more value in other aspects, such as they offer crowd control or sustain or mobility or defense.
Or condies.
Will have a lower power coefficient. So if the skill's got other stuff, it's going to hit less hard. Like they're using these hard and fast rules, so things aren't like all over the place. In some cases,
it's also saying that two-handed weapons like hammer, which has a higher base damage on their weapon itself, the coefficient is more 1.82 instead of 2.
Yeah, they have a sentence for that in a second. We've pared down the secondary value. In some cases, we've pared down the secondary value, and others, we've shaved the damage. It really comes down to what the desired purpose of the skill is, and as such, how much of the skill's power budget should be spent on damage. The 2.0 is not a hard cap, just the general top end for a single hit, high damaging abilities. And yeah, Boots, I feel like I have seen at least one thing coming up that I think I saw one that went up to 2.3. Or something
well,
like that.
I know that there's certain things that have multiple hits that when you hit all of them, they're more than 2.
Yeah, I guess that's true as well. That's when the tooltips look really big in game as well, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, then they say what Boots just said. One thing to keep in mind with damage calculations is the difference in a weapon's strength. For example, a 2.0 coefficient with an axe is approximately equivalent to just 1.82 coefficient with a hammer, due to the hammer's higher weapon strength. With a Marauder Amulet, and no outside modifiers. So for people who don't know, Marauder Amulet is like Zerk, but with a bit of vitality on there, okay? It's kind of like the baseline, kind of like damage, flat damage oriented amulet that they really kind of operate around. In a Marauder Amulet, no other modifiers like Might or whatever, a 2.0 coefficient with a one-handed weapon would be about 3,900 critical hits against someone who's light armor. Our goal here is that players should need to invest, and I think what they're trying to point out is that's quite low. Our goal here is that players should need to invest in damage traits, slot offensive utility skills, and sequence abilities around might and vulnerability stacks in order to achieve significant damage numbers. So as the game currently stands, there's so much might and so many high coefficients everywhere, and so much Condi spam in terms of like vulnerability and incapacitation. The game does a lot of damage at the moment. There's a lot of damage floating around. Now, they still want those spikes to be there, but they take a lot more setup. And you can't have so much quality of life in your build if you're going for something like that, right? And the trade-off is more evident. Lastly, they say condition damage reductions are a bit less mathy, and we're continuing to push conditions toward less burst potential by reducing the number of stacks and extending durations where it makes sense. Some of this is handled on the skill level, and we're making heavy reductions to traits that apply conditions on hit, on crit, or other conditions being applied.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about this, though, is the main nerf that I've seen so far to Condi is not what this sentence is suggesting. Is the opposite.
Yeah, and I've actually seen a lot of fun-looking new stuff that actually are traits applying lots of Condis.
Yeah.
like when we get to Revenant, guys, you're going to see the Malix changes, and it's like, oh, there's all these new Condis. I don't know how that gels with what they just said, really.
No, this sentence is not at all what I've seen so far in the notes. In fact, they say they're trying to reduce burst potential and increase duration, but all they've done so far as I could see, although, I mean, they've done this for a couple of skills, but the biggest change they've done so far, well, I guess we'll read it down below, is reduce the duration.
Yeah, and sometimes you'll see duration increased on some places, but not necessarily stat counts and stuff. Well, we'll see. So
we'll see.
All right, do you want to read their philosophies on sustain, cooldowns, and instant skills?
I would love to. All right. So cooldowns and durations. We want cooldowns to be felt.
Hell yeah!
Cooldowns. Longer cooldowns promote more calculated usage of skills. If skills are only if used poorly, it should create an opportunity for the enemy to push their advantage. Shorter durations of high impact buffs might have a similar effect. Skill for timing is going to be rewarded, and poor usage is going to be exploitable by enemies. In some cases, it's going to make sense to have a longer duration attached to a longer cooldown, but most of the time we're looking to have shorter durations for things like stability, protection, quickness, high might stacks, among others.
So it's kind of weird. They kind of conflated two things there. Cooldowns, but durations like boon uptime, basically. They're trying to kill boon uptime, which is brilliant. Yeah. More readable combat, more visible what's going on. I mean, I've kind of already climbed this hill. I don't really have any problem picking out stab in the middle of a ton of plasma or whatever, right? Like, I really don't mind. But it is a barrier for the game, and it's really good that they call this stuff down.
But it's also interesting here that, so damage, for the damage part, they're saying they're reducing all the flat damage, and they're saying it's going to be 3.9 without any modifiers. And they're saying, we'd like you to, if you want to do high damage, stack your modifiers like might and vulnerability. But then in the next point, they say, oh, yeah, we're also going to make getting might much more difficult.
Well, no. They're saying shorter durations, right? I've definitely seen some of the changes down there. It's like, oh, this skill used to give you 3 might for 30 seconds. It now gives you 20 might for 5. So
yeah, you're talking about
Signet of Rage for Warrior. Yeah. So I think it's stuff like that, right? Like,
yes,
you can, but you got to do the win. If you're going to pop Signet of Rage, you've got to do something with it then. Otherwise, like, what was the point?
There's no like stacking for a long time and running around with everything.
Yeah, and you guys will see so much concentration has been culled. There's a lot of stuff like that. So, but yeah, I love this Boots. Isn't this good? Long cooldowns are coming back.
Be good. I think it's gonna be good.
Guys, there's some 300-second cooldowns coming up. Oh yeah, baby. Oh,
so hold on a second though. Are people going to be taking those traits?
Well, I don't know. But there's a funny thing for competitive. All your stuff is cooling down while you're dead, and that's always been like a thing. That means even if you had a 90-second cooldown on something, it realistically still translates into having it every important duel or whatever.
Right.
And therefore,
However,
it's worth taking the trait. Now it's going to be like, okay, it's only 1 in every 3 engagements you get the thing proc.
300-second cooldown. You know what that means? The maximum PvP duration there is in a game is 15 minutes. That's like if the game lasts the entire duration. That means this trait will only work 3 times in the match, at most.
I know. I didn't know it would come from you, but I was well aware people would make that kind of mathy thing. But in really competitive, serious situations, if something saves you and wins you a crucial fight, then that can snowball the whole game in another direction.
I agree, and I think things like 300-second cooldown should have a place in this game, but maybe the trade-off would be that it's a little bit more powerful than just 2 seconds of invulnerability.
I could buy that. What I just really want is I want to be like, okay, I blew this guy's cooldown, and now I know I don't have to actively think and count like 20 cooldowns at once because they're all under threat of coming back. If it's done, then it's done for the fight, and like I can actually feel good about that. Like that's one of the best things to do when you're playing competitive, and understanding, okay, that guy's probably got this passive, waiting for the passive to be done, and then actually feeling like you've solved it instead of being like, oh god, the fight might go on long enough that they get it back. There's so many good changes like that as well. By the way, guys, the 300 seconds is only really trait-oriented stuff. I haven't seen a 300-second elite or anything like that.
No.
But some utilities have gone up. One of the Ellie utilities is way up there, like 90 now, isn't it, or something? Twist of Fate? We'll see that in the next video.
So sustain.
Yeah, what do they
say? Raw
here?
Healing is always going to be closely tied to damage. As damage comes down, healing needs to be reduced as well. As mentioned above, we want to see more opportunity between cooldowns to push through damage. So we're primarily targeting skills and traits with lower cooldowns or constantly pulsing heals.
Kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah, reducing healing because they're reducing damage. We'll see if that means that it's going to be harder to heal through condies now. Instant skills and passive traits. Counterplay is important. Skills that have a major impact on an enemy player should allow that player the opportunity to react, which means that we want to avoid instant skills that do large amounts of damage or hard CC. Damn it. Damn. In general, this means that instant skills are going to do less damage or focus on a secondary effect where applicable. Traits that fire instant skills or that trigger an offensive effect under easy to fulfill conditions on hit, on crit, might mid, high threshold, health threshold, etc. receive similar consideration. We've also done a pass on traits that provide automatic defensive triggers, is what we were just talking about. Traits that negate incoming CC or grant hard damage mitigation. We're getting large cooldown increases. That's an understatement. Lesser defensive procs, protection on CC, auto condition, cleanse, etc. also receiving longer cooldowns or reduced effectiveness, though not as extreme. We want to promote more active gameplay, and this update is a good opportunity to make heavier adjustments to these passive traits. I think that's great. It's a great thing to do for the game. But,
were you joking when you said damn it?
For instance, yeah, I love using instant stuff.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Look,
for PvE...
Look, I understand why they would want to tone that down, and I understand why playing against instant stuff is terrible, but I love doing it.
I see. Yeah.
Like, I keep thinking back to, like, you know, my old instant burst elementalist days where you just, you know, tap 9 skills at once and you kill a guy.
You know that scrapper build you made? Do you think that gets through this unscathed?
Some aspects of it are definitely toned down, but I think it could still kill things easily. Yeah, like the blast gyro doesn't do any damage anymore, so you're gonna switch it for something else.
Interesting. So yeah, this is just brilliant. This is music to my ears. I love all of this. I like the idea that everything you're watching, if you're a spectator, whether you're playing and you're watching what the other person's doing, or I'm like a third-party spectator and I'm watching 2 people fight, the idea that I can actually physically see actions tied to the prominent moments in the fight is really important to me. And that comes from someone who loves Fresh Air Ellie and has played massive amounts of it, and it's looking pretty battered as a result of these philosophies.
Yep.
So, Patch notes. Moving on to the notes. Remember, these changes are not locked down. So these are the last things I want to talk about in this video, guys. Just general item stuff. And then we'll look at the professions themselves. First of all, they say all splits in the thread are for PvP and World versus World. That's what we're looking at right now. And so here's the first change. In PvP only, not World versus World or PvE, weapon strength will now always use the midpoint instead of randomly rolling across the range.
This is interesting.
I like this a lot. You know, I remember way back when, on the old PvP system, there were special PvP weapons you could buy. Like, they were called balanced weapons or something.
Yeah, and just to test damage.
Yeah, and you could use those, right? They didn't hit hard or whatever, but they were 100% uniform. So what that means, guys, is as I mouse over this Chaos Dagger right now, and it says it does 970 to 1030 damage. In PvP, that RNG swing of 60 damage, which, by the way, could crit and then do, you know, way more, and then get all of its other modifiers, so it's more significant than it looks. That is not going to be there. It will always be in the middle of that range, 1000 for a dagger strike, right? Yeah. And that's true for everything across PvP. I think that's really good, Boots, honestly.
I think it's fine. I don't think it's amazing or bad. I think it's fine.
Yeah, you're probably right that it's not a big deal, but I think it's a healthy deal. That's what I'll go for, right?
Sure, yeah, it's healthy enough, yeah.
So, this is pretty interesting. Build items. In some ways, Boots, this is some of my favorite stuff. Reduce stats on 4-stat amulets by X amount. You guys can pause the video if you want. 1050 has gone to 1000, and then
220 total.
So basically, the 4-stat amulets in the game, because they're spread over 4 attributes, the devs actually gave each individual attribute a little bit more. Like, overall, you get more stats out of investing in 4 attributes than in just 3, but you're more specialized with 3. That was like the balance they were going with.
Yeah, but now it's identical.
The meta has been for years, really, that you do the 4-stat amulets more than ever, really. It's mostly 4-stat amulets are the ones you go for. And I guess in recognizing that, the devs decided, well, they don't need that little perk there. So all the current meta amulets are rained down in comparison to non-meta amulets right now, as a general kind of rule of thumb. Some stuff slips out. So I like that change. That's cool.
Yep,
right?
I agree.
It kind of closes the gap between, do I really want to run Berserker instead of Marauder? Like, that's super glassy. Do I really want to commit to that? Well, look, Marauder now has 600 less health than it did before. You know, there's all these little things, right?
Sure.
Sigil of Annulment's been removed. I'm very happy with that. It was OP. It was everywhere. Sigil of Agility has been removed. I'm even more happy with that.
You've complained about that on every single video we did in the last, like, year.
I know. You're free of me complaining about that, Boots. How do you feel?
Good. I feel good.
Dude, I'm so happy. They did it. They realized that their previous nerfs were not enough. They got rid of it. Fantastic. And now this is crazy. What amulets did they get rid of here, dude?
They got rid of every single concentration amulet. And is that every condition duration amulet?
Expertise oriented?
Yeah.
I think probably, yeah.
Yeah, so every condition duration amulet and every boon duration amulet.
So, just to be clear, Deadshot, super meta for a lot of Scourge and Necro variants, gone. Even I've seen some Mirages successfully play Deadshot. Viper, no one really ran Viper, but hey, I think it's the expertise, as Boots was talking about, so it's gone. Wanderer, super meta. Great Duelist, Conde Amulet, gone. Diviner, this is the concentration. The Harrier, gone, gone, gone. And then Seeker as well. Crazy.
Yeah.
So you got a real mix there.
So there you go. That's why it's going to be a lot. Well, that's part of the reason it's going to be a lot harder to run boon duration stuff and get might stacks.
Well, here's what's cool. Yeah, in a way, it's kind of like the devs are removing an essence of buildcraft, and that's the whole con duration or boon duration side of the game. In a way, it kind of feels like that. But in another way, I'll say this: there are obviously runes like Runes of Dwayne, which is just massive regeneration duration. So I think that will still be a thing, Boots, but now it's teching into a specific thing.
That's not it. Oh, that's not everything though. If you look just a little bit further, they're going to talk about those as well.
Yeah, but they're not going to get hit as hard. The generic ones are getting hit hard, but the specific targeted ones aren't hit so hard. That's what I'm trying to say.
They're still hit pretty hard.
All right, okay, so let's go into it then. So some PvP runes have been adjusted. The 2-slot bonuses that grant a specific boon on specific condition durations have been reduced from 10 to 4. 4-slot bonuses have been reduced from 20 to 6. 6-slot bonuses have been reduced from 20 to 10. So it's definitely down.
So for example, now if you want to do a burning build, you have Balthazar's rune. Yeah. It used to give you 50% burn duration. Now it gives you 20% burn duration.
Yeah.
And you don't have additional burn duration from your amulet.
And obviously there are traits, right, which allow you to tech into a specific thing as well. Guardian's a great example because you do get that there. So again, I do think that you'll be able to, but it's all across the board, it's down, all right? That's absolutely right. Yeah. So they also say for the general condition durations, 2-slot bonuses that gave you 5% now give you 2. 4-slot bonuses that gave you 10 give you 3, and 6 give you, instead of 10, just 5.
Right, so if you had a general build that did a lot of different condis that used to get, let's say, 20-25% condi duration, you are now only getting 10%.
Yeah, and just so that you guys know, a lot of the strongest builds were all about getting, if you were a condi build in some ways, it was about stacking those boon durations up, it was about stacking that condi duration up and letting it roll, and all that's like being eliminated hard. Really hard. So, pretty good. They give an example of the Rune of the Afflicted. It's been adjusted from being a rune that was 25 condi damage, 10% poison, 50 condi damage, 20% bleed, 100 condi damage, 10% condi in general, and create a Death Nova, to just 25 condi damage, 4% poison, 50 condi damage, 6% bleed, 100 condi damage, and 5 overall. I mean, you guys can pause if you... I almost feel like I shouldn't have read that out. And then you got the list of the runes. I mean, check this out. It's crazy. Look at all the runes that have changed.
Yeah, just because of that idea.
I would estimate that's maybe 25 to 30 of the runes, right, in the game?
Yeah, it's a lot of runes.
Most of them have been hit by something. There's some really relevant stuff.
This is more than 25 runes. No, this is like 10, 20. This is like 30, 40 runes.
It's crazy. So you got to think about stuff like runes of speed as well going forward, you know, like... One of the big things I was hoping for from this patch, and I'll just be clear about my disappointment, guys, is mobility. I think mobility is a serious power creep state, and the patch doesn't seem to touch it in any way. But the lack of swiftness duration does shift the balance a little bit. I still think swiftness will be in abundance post-patch, but it's something to think about. And runes of speed, permanent running around with super speed, might be less of a thing now.
They don't mention anything about sigils, though, so does that mean that the 25 condition duration sigil still exist?
I would guess so, yeah, which again kind of lets you tech into a specific one, right?
Yeah.
But sigils are kind of... I mean, yeah, sigils, that might be good, because a lot of the time, you know, you just don't want to take one of those sigils because they feel too specific, yeah. I mean, these are things as well, Boots, that are really important to remember. You know, we're going to see a lot of power nerfs. These are kind of big things for Condi across the board, and we're just not going to think about them much as we go into the individual classes.
Yeah.
But hey, so there you go, guys. Next, what we're going to do is move on to the light armors. That will be in another video, so please feel free to tune in on that. If you're disappointed that the video's ended, don't worry, we'll get it up very soon for you. And what we'll do is look at the general stuff, not just PvP things. There's lots of general changes too, and the PvP stuff for the light armors on the next one. Hope to see you there.
Bye-bye.
All right, cool.